Today we're talking about a common question that victims of personal injury accidents have, and that is, what is the case worth? You may be wondering what your case is worth, and that's a fair question and an important question to ask and understand. I'm Andrew Iacobelli. I'm a personal injury lawyer with Iacobelli Law Firm, and I practice law in Ontario and in Florida. And a common question that most personal injury victims have is, ultimately, what is the case worth? And is it worth pursuing the case? And today I'm going to try to explain how we go about evaluating cases and how you can speak to your lawyer to try to find out more information about what your case is worth. I'll say this at the outset, when we meet new clients, it's very difficult to assess the value of a case. Any lawyer that tells you they know what your case is worth after speaking to you briefly is probably not being completely forthright. We'll have a general sense of what the possibilities for the case are based on the severity of the injuries and the impact it is having on you, but ultimately a lot of detailed information is going to be necessary in order to calculate with any real specificity as to the value, ranges of value for your particular case. Now go ahead and explain the way lawyers and insurance companies and ultimately the jury or judge, if your case got to a trial, would have to assess value of a case. It really boils down to your losses and the harms caused by the injuries. So the biggest factor always in the value of a case is the extent of the injuries. Generally speaking, the more severe the injuries are, the more valuable the case is. The greater the harm is and the greater the losses are, the greater the monetary value of the case. And that comes into play for a few reasons. One, we'll look at the economic losses that the injuries have caused. So for instance, if the injury is severe and there are extensive medical bills or healthcare expenses, both that have occurred since the date of the accident, and also we'll look into whether there are going to be continued medical expenses over the person's lifetime. Those obviously are significant economic losses in some cases, which have to be factored and calculated in order to assess what they're worth. The other major economic loss is income loss. And so we'll look at the income, obviously, that's been lost from the time of the accident to present, as well as what are the prospects for the future. Is the person completely unemployable as a result of a really severe injury, or do they have a competitive disadvantage in the open labor market, or is it something more akin to a change in their job, a change that affects their ability to earn the income to their fullest. So again, that's an economic loss, and it requires an assessment and analysis in order to come up with those values. You have to actually look at the numbers and understand what the losses are for the particular client. The other major area of claims, damages in Ontario personal injury cases and even in Florida personal injury cases concern pain and suffering. And pain and suffering is probably the most difficult part of the claim to assess in terms of what the damages are. There's not a whole lot of guidance that's provided. In fact, even at jury trial, the jury who has to award pain and suffering damages, they're not given a lot of guidance. What we look at there is our track record of the firm with similar cases, and also we monitor jury verdicts. Every case is unique and specific, and while we go through those factors, we have to look at every case individually to assess the value. Based on our experience litigating cases in Ontario for personal injury victims, We do have an understanding of the value of certain types of injuries generally within a range. So of course we can share sometimes ranges in terms of first impressions based on the injuries, but part of our job really is to help develop that story, to tell that story of the injury and the accident and the impact it's had on the person's life and may continue to have into the future, in order to really try to obtain the best possible result for each of our clients. And that's what we try to do each and every time.